sir. You're about to see something really special.
Really thought this part of my life was behind me. Frenzy disappeared with the drinking 3 years ago. Why now? This makes no sense, and I'm right on the verge of freaking out.
Back from your life.
These people can be animals.
What you burn.
Thingy's out.
Some bitter things you should never.
Good cheese.
Learn. Wallow through the days.
Remember, cosplay's not consent.
So here's to me. Congratulations, me. Yay, me.
This would all be so much easier if I was hammered. Hammered.
Won't be there
Right.
You can take away the anger, but you leave behind the pain. It's your soul I will.
New ventures are always scary.
Till I'm melting
Blah, blah, blah. Something positive and uplifting.
tomorrow, but the hurt will still remain. In your soul I'll live forever, till I'm melting in.
Don't miss our new film, The Love Song of William H. Shaw, coming soon to a streaming service near you. Hey everyone, this is Cliff from Talking Pondo. Just wanted to give you a quick heads up about spoilers on the show. We do talk about the films in a certain amount of detail, so you may want to watch the film first and then come back if you're not a fan of spoilers. Also, every now and then there's a little bit of adult language, so we wanted to give you fair warning on that. We hope you enjoy the episode, and we really appreciate you listening.
Welcome to Making Pondo and Talking Pondo. Talking Pondo is a podcast where we pick out 2 movies each week and talk about them in detail. Making Pondo is a podcast where we talk to people we've made films with and we discuss all their experiences on set. Today on Making Pondo, we feature Geoffrey Notkin, who has acted in 2 of our films, as well as done set decoration, makeup artist, and a slew of other jobs.
Hey Marty.
Hey, Cliff.
So I guess we should introduce our podcast, Making Pondo.
Yeah, I think this is a good time at the beginning. Hello, I'm Marty Catola.
I'm Cliff Campbell.
And we're indie filmmakers. We've made 5 feature films, and we're going to be talking on our new podcast here with various people we've worked with on the movies with, all of the different actors, producers, crew members, pretty much everybody, slowly over the course of as many episodes of this as we can crank out.
That's right. All of these people will have worked with our production company and us, Pondo Enterprises, which is why we call it Making Pondo.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to talk about tales from the set and their art and how their experiences with us and their experiences in general with their art. So should be an interesting conversation if you're into indie filmmaking or filmmaking in general.
Exactly. We feel a lot of these experiences are universal. You know, we like to watch and listen to other people talk about making movies, and there's always those moments where you're like, yep, same things happen to us, although on a different scale. So we figured, well, we can share our experiences, and it would be just a good way to not only reminisce about it, but to kind of make a historical record of what it's like to make these films.
Yeah, I mean, and if you learn something from it and somehow avoid some of the pitfalls that we ran into, even better.
Today we have Geoff Notkin.
Geoffrey.
Yes.
Maloysius Notkin.
Greetings, programs. How did you know my middle name? I've been keeping that secret all these years.
It's a part of the long list of Pondo names.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Would be a podcast in and of itself, almost.
Yes. For those who don't know,
we should explain what that is to the people.
Yeah, we give Geoff nicknames. It started with when he did the music soundtrack, we called him T. Geoff Notkin after T-Bone Burnett from the sound guy for the Coen Brothers, and then it was Don De La Notkin. There's so many nicknames we've given him over the years in email. It's hilarious.
And they usually
and then I adopted that. I liked that so much that in our voluminous correspondence of probably thousands of emails over the years, I started this thing where I would sign my name with a different Pondo signature every time. And you'll be very amused to know that I have actually kept a list of all of them.
Oh, that's
And
fantastic.
so I'll just read off a few. Here we've got Hampton Pondo Starchild Fancher. That was something to do with Blade Runner. P. Notkin Ondo, Pondo Churchill, PG Notkin House, Pondo PG Woodhouse, and hundreds. Pondo La Mancha.
Pondo La
Oh, I
Mancha.
like this. Pondo Atreides Starchild. I guess we were talking about Dune that day. But yeah, I don't know why, but I tell you, the list goes on and on and on. Buzz Pondo year. Well, there's some pretty good ones. Maybe not a November Pondo. That was a year ago. That was last November.
Yeah, I've always
Yes,
had
we're very silly.
the generic Marty Pondo because it was an easy email to remember, and Cliff's long been Dr. Pondo, which is the whole story behind that. And now we got to get Eric some sort of Pondo name to really bring him into the fold here. The power
Yeah, he
of
probably
more.
feels really left out. I didn't think about that.
I think we tried to give him one at some point, but it just didn't stick.
Didn't
Eric's
fit.
not a nickname type of dude.
He's not really, is he? He's quite a serious fellow.
He's quite a serious fellow. And those of you who have heard his podcast, you'll know exactly what we're talking about. He's very, Eric, I love Eric, but he's a very serious guy.
Eric is the reason that we found you, because that leads into our first question. How did you find us and start working with us? And well, Eric is a big part of that.
That's so true. We wouldn't be friends and creative partners were it not for my old show Meteorite Men, the TusCon Science Fiction Convention, which we lovingly call TusCon, and in particular Eric. And the story goes back to, I suppose it was 2010. I think it was when Meteorite Men was in its second season and we were airing on Science and Discovery. And I was living in Tucson. And I was invited by the Tucson Sci-Fi Convention to be one of their guests that year. And they had established a science track at the Sci-Fi Convention. But also there always was a big crossover between Meteorite Men and comic book people, which made me very happy. And particularly season 1 has a lot of comic book imagery in it. And so I enthusiastically accepted and was asked to do a presentation about adventure TV, science meteorites, how we made the adventure show, that kind of thing, and relate it to sci-fi and comic books a bit, which I have no trouble doing. And I met Marty and I met briefly, and Eric and I met briefly, and I had a great time. And then we didn't really spend a lot of time together, but we met. And I always remember seeing Eric darting around in his suit and his fedora and his long coat. And I go, that guy looks just like the Shadow. What an interesting character. And so I had a great time, loved the convention, wonderful convention. It's been very good to us, of course, as film producers also. And so I was invited back the next year. And there's this guy, Eric, again, running around with his fedora and everything. And I go, oh, there's that interesting guy from last year. And he was doing some of the PR. And I'd been asked to organize one of the panels. I brought my friend Susie Corbell, filmmaker from New Mexico, over as a guest. And we decided that we were going to do this little photo shoot out on the lawn of the hotel. And Eric just leapt in like a commando. He goes, oh, I'll assist with this. We need the lights over there. And let's get a bounce card over here and bring this up. And I go, wow, this guy's a real pro. And so we chatted and we hung out a bit. And then, I don't know, some weeks went by, some months went by, and I found his card. And I go, I'm going to send that guy hello. So I sent him an email and I said, I hope this isn't too bizarre. I know we don't really know each other, but you just seem like a really interesting guy. If you're ever going to a film screening or anything interesting, let me know. And he wrote back immediately and I said, are you still up? Can I give you a call? And he called me. We had this long conversation about filmmaking and comics and sci-fi. So that was the initial meeting. The fun part of the story was when you guys, I guess through Eric, invited me to do a little cameo in Revenge of Zoe. And the idea, of course, because it's set in the comic book world, a lot of the action takes place in a comic book store. And I had fairly recently published a memoir about my life in the comics biz called My Incredibly Strange and Amazing Real Life Adventures in the World of Comic Books. Very short, snappy title. And I guess it was Eric's idea that I would come into the store and I would buy a copy of my own book in the shop. And we thought, oh, that'd be funny. I go, yeah, sure. I'd love to do that. That'll be great. And I went to the table read, which was in the comic store, in Charlie's comic book store, which is sadly no longer there. It was a TusCon institution for many years. And that was the first time that I'd met the cast. And I was blown away by the script, by how good the script was. And I'm sitting there at this table read. I only had a handful of lines. Probably didn't really need to be there for the table read. But I'm really glad that I was.
You were late in the read too, yeah.
I really enjoyed it. And I'd say for the whole second half of the table read, I just couldn't wait for it to be over because I wanted to rush up to Eric and go, Eric, this is such a great script. Would you ask the guys if they might be interested in taking me on to help with this film in some way? And the embarrassing part about this is I hadn't read the whole script before the table read. I meant to, but I read my bit, I don't know, a page and skimmed through a few things. So I didn't know how good the script was until I actually saw the cast do it live. And so I collared Eric afterwards with great enthusiasm and said, man, this is just great. I love this script. This is a really great cast. Go ask the guys. Do you think they might be interested? And we're just complimenting Eric a few minutes ago, but you can imagine Eric very underplaying it and saying something like, "Oh yes, well, okay, Geoff, yeah, sure, I'll be glad to ask them. I'd be surprised if they said no." I said, "Well, go ask them now." Well, everybody's here. I don't want to have to wait. So anyway, so that was the story. That was just a few days before we started filming, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I kind of came in and started inserting myself into all kinds of things like, oh, look at that poster. I could fix that. Or here, look, we need some more comic books here.
That's my favorite, I think. Or that's when I knew it was going to work because we put that poster up. We had this black and white poster in the film, the Frenzy film, and it had this, when it was printed, it had this white edge around it.
Mm-hmm.
And Marty and I are doing 9,000 things at once. And so it just doesn't, we don't stop to take the moment to say, you should probably cut that border off of that. And Geoff walks up and goes, my God, you've got to let me cut the border off of that poster. And I'm like, yeah, oh, right, please do. Yes. Fantastic. And he went and cut it off and then put it back up. And it was like, oh, that's night and day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's when it was like, oh, this is going to work. He gets it. Works
oh,
like
that's
we
so
do.
Nice. That was the beginning, wasn't it? And I
Yeah,
had
it's like day one of the shoot, I think.
Yeah, and we found a cutting board, and we found an X-Acto knife, and it was a giant poster, and it was a little board. And there's actually a photo of me doing that. I vividly remember that, trying to cut this massive poster a little bit at a time with this very small X-Acto knife on a very small cutting board in the location while everyone's getting set up. And I felt like, God, are you being a bit nitpicky? Aren't you?
No.
They seem to be pretty keen about tidying up some art things, and then off we went.
Yeah,
it was amazing.
The art and set decorator had arrived, and we didn't even know it yet.
Me neither. I thought I was only going to do a cameo, and years later, I'm still here. Remember that British guy that came to do the cameo? We could never get rid of him. He was always hanging around, and then he brought his camera and started taking location photos. What a nuisance!
Notkin in the shotgun. That's what we call that. I got a Notkin in my shotgun. Can we get him to back up, please?
Oh gosh, how many times have I heard that?
We've called action, and there in the B camera, we can still see Geoff clicking off the left.
Or you can hear the you're like, no.
Yeah, I also learned that pretty quickly, that when Cliff yells action, you're not allowed to take any more pictures.
And even if you do, the actors knew at that point to wait for the clicks to stop, because you can see them like they know as well, and it's like,
really?
Okay, yeah, we all fell into a sync with each other pretty quick.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Oh, I never knew that. I guess. Well, and Marty, you would have noticed that when you're doing the editing. But I must say, I got better. I think when we were shooting Love Song of William Shaw, I was only told to move on a few times. I would say less than 5.
We thought we were going to make some big blooper reel, but turned out there was only maybe like 2 or 3 instances this time. And it's like, I guess we don't have a whole.
You were so busy doing. I mean, you had so much more to do on the second film.
Mm-hmm.
You were so much busier. I don't think you had the time really to roam like you did the first one, right? And, I mean, Jesus, you and Biscuit running back and forth between those two houses alone was just a Herculean task for the two of you.
Yeah, and that was a very interesting location film experience for all of us. I think that our very good friends Jessica Stone, whom we call Biscuit, that's her nickname, very kindly offered the use of her home as one of the locations for Love Song, and then we. One of my jobs, as you lads will well remember, was to find a pottery wheel for Billy to throw the pots on. And I thought, well, no big deal. I'll just buy one and then sell it when we're done. Thinking it would be, I mean, how much would a pottery wheel cost? Like $40 or $50? No, like $700 or $800 if you can find one in the state of Arizona. So I looked and looked and looked, and I've finally found somebody who had one that we could borrow, but it was far away. And she said, oh, it's very heavy. You'll need several guys to lift it. And I was trying to figure out the logistics of how are we going to, she's a professional potter. She needs it. I can't take it away for weeks at a time. How are we going to do this? And then it turns out that Biscuit says, oh yeah, we could use my neighbor's house directly across the street as the second location. And by the way, she's got a pottery wheel on the patio. What are the chances?
It's really creepy sometimes how that stuff lines up.
Yeah, that's the real movie making magic.
Yeah, the universe just giving it up. Like, well, if you guys are, and that's why you do all that work and get going, right? Like, because things like that are gonna happen. I believe it. I truly believe, like, as you put all that effort in, the universe starts kind of giving back to you and saying, well, here, okay, you've unlocked this thing. Here you go.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I like it that you treat it as a maybe a prize, a treasure trove in a video game. To me, I feel more like the universe is going, okay, he suffered X amount of hassles and failure and tape running out and camera breaking down, car breaking down, gear getting stolen, person having a complete nuclear explosion on set. Now you can have a good thing. You can have, here's your pottery wheel. Now get ready to solve 40 more problems before I give you another break.
You suffered all that. Here's your pottery wheel.
It was a good universe bonus, though, because I just couldn't get over that. I don't know how we would have moved that thing. We would have had to probably take 3 or 4 guys up to far north of Tucson to move that. Anyway, it was a beautiful moment.
It was. I remember, Bradford got lessons from Marnie, who owned the pottery wheel in the house, on how to do pottery. And I remember when it came timed it for him to do it, actually on camera, she's just off to the side just giggling uncontrollably because he's doing it so wrong that she just can't even contain herself.
And we had that. I remember one of the requests from you gents to me as art department, prop department, was we need some really horrible sculptures that Billy's made that we can have on the shelves in the background. And I actually, in a rare example of me, in fact, being able to delegate something to somebody else instead of doing it myself, I asked Marnie if she would mind doing that. And they're actually quite nice, the ones that she made. I know we all wanted them to look like some sort of radiation mutants because Billy would have done such an appalling job. But anyway, it does get the point across. And yeah, there comes a point when you're art directing and working as a supporting actor in the film and doing location photography and multiple other things that you actually just can't do everything that you might like to.
Yeah, that's That's
hence
a
the
lesson
beauty
that we
of
learned.
production assistants. Could you run to the post office and ship this for us, please?
PAs are so useful. We didn't have them before Zoe and and Love Song, and it was just like, wow, this is so, I can't believe that. So I just sent somebody back to go grab that, and like I remember one of the PAs went to get lunch and missed a sandwich, and I was just like, you got to go back and get that sandwich, dude. It's like, oh, this is great, because I'd have been the one to have to go get the sandwich, or Marty.
I would have been, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He's been gone for 2 hours getting ice. You don't have to worry about that anymore with PA.
That reminds me of something that happened on Meteorite Men. We were filming, I think it was the first Texas episode we did. We were filming in West Texas in June or July, and it was well into the hundreds. And we had a very new, very young PA. It was his very first day filming, and he forgot to load the water into the trucks for the crew, and I think it was 105 or 106. So Sonia Bourne, our field producer, said, "Look, okay, you need to get in the truck immediately and drive to the nearest convenience store and stock up on water for the crew. We're going to need it. It's a long shoot day. Go now. Go quickly." So he does. Leave right away. It takes a long time, and finally he comes back, and he had one case of water. And it was those teeny little bottles, the little sip-sized bottles. They're about the size of a golf ball. And he'd only brought that for the entire crew in 105-degree weather for what we were expecting to be a 12 or 14-hour shoot day. And there was a bit of a meltdown, and he was, sent back to get the missing sandwich. Get 10 cases of water, real-size bottles, not those stupid little things.
Well, and that's when you learn. That's when you realize when you're on the set and you're doing things like we do. You're the head of a department or something that sometimes you have to just spell it out.
Yeah.
Not just go to the convenience store, but go to the convenience store, get 8 cases of 12-ounce bottles of water. Come back here, put them in coolers with ice. Oh, well, while you're at the convenience store, get ice. It's you have to. Because some get it and fit right in and go, oh yeah, okay, that's obvious. And then others are just like, you have to explain it.
And that's
so true.
It goes across the board in every aspect of filmmaking too, where you just assume, oh, they understand what I'm talking about. Oh shit, I guess they didn't.
They really don't
explain myself correctly. So everybody out there, explain yourself. Be completely transparent and always have a lot of water. You might think soda or all this other stuff. People need water, especially the actors, because it's hard to do your lines if you're drinking nothing but Coca-Cola.
I mean, I don't mind having the soda on set because I like my actors to be awake for the caffeine. But yeah, you gotta have the water.
You gotta have the water too.
I sometimes get accused of over-explaining things, which may well be true. I'm quite detail-oriented, but my goal is I want to give somebody direction and they can go and carry out the entire task and return without having to call me and go, Geoff, did you want plastic bottles or glass bottles? Or are cans okay? Do you want gallons? They don't have... This would be the thing. They don't have cases. Is it okay to get gallon jugs instead? Yes, obviously. Just get whatever is available. It's Texas in the summer. We need as much water as you can transport in the car yesterday.
That's hilarious.
But I didn't say it like that because he was a nice young guy and he was learning. And it was all good in the end. And nobody passed away in that episode.
It was like us running around looking for water during the last production.
Jesus, yeah.
Well, I found 2 cases over here. Well, I found
we were texting each other. Hey, the place up here on the north side has cases of water for during the COVID thing.
Remember that, Geoff? You were like, "Well, I found a case of Dasani over here," and it's like,
"Oh, that's right. Yeah. I completely forgot about that." And that was also when the toilet paper and paper towel shortage had started,
and the sanitizer shortage.
And sanitizer. That's right.
Vegetables for Olivia to cook.
And actually going back to our friends who so generously provided their homes as locations, numerous other people who helped, when we were at the end and we were wrapping up everything, I said, listen, we want to get something to thank you for everything. How about fruit basket or gift card or something? And everyone said, we just want toilet paper and paper towels if you can get them.
Yeah, we were like, here, you can get whatever we have. Oh my goodness. Yeah, Marty will tell you on a set, I'm a 2-bag of ice guy. Get 2 bags of ice. Don't get 1 bag of ice. Get 2 bags of ice. Never enough.
Good advice.
You never have enough ice. To those of you listening, this is solid, sound indie filmmaking advice we're giving you here.
Seems like common sense, but you get going so fast, and you're wearing 30 hats, and these things can slip past you.
It's so true. We're going to probably come back to this later, but my friend David Rout, who is a fantastic producer and director and was one of the 2 directors I worked with on my TV series STEM Journals, is someone I just really like working with. I think he's won 7 Emmys. He's a brilliant guy.
Dang. Wow.
Yeah. And we had the show STEM Journals that we were doing. I was the main host, and we did different every episode was on a different science subject. So we did astronomy and paleontology and so on. And we quite often had young students, science students, come on as my was my guest co-host for a segment, and they would typically be middle schoolers, and one of them was very, very keen to go into the film business. She was really fantastic. She had a natural gift, speaking, learning lines, and just being very professional. And so she asked both of us, she said, I really want to go to film school. Do you think it's a good idea? Should I go to film school? Geoff, what do you think? And I said, well, I didn't go to film school. I would have loved to have gone to film school for fun. I took film classes at other schools, but Dave went to film school. Ask Dave, what do you think? Should she go to film school? And he said, and this is, okay, bear in mind, this is coming from a 7-time Emmy Award-winning director-producer. He said, I didn't learn anything at film school that I couldn't have learned working as a PA for a couple of years. And I thought, wow, there's practical advice for you.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Wow. I mean, there's two schools of thought on it, as far as I know, which is, you go the education route, the book route, or you go the hands-on route, right?
Yeah. Well, and please don't think I'm putting down film school at all.
I don't. I think whatever gets you there and gets you the good, gets you to making the film, right? Like, it's so hard to make a movie and finish a movie. However you got there, congratulations.
That's a really good comment. And I also think it's a matter of personality. And since I've done a lot of work with kids, a lot of educational work and outreach work, many times in my life, parents have taken me aside and they've got teenage kids and they go, our kids don't know what to do. Should they go to college? Should they not go to college? It's so expensive. And we're just really stuck. Can you give our kids some advice? And I don't have kids of my own. I don't know that I'm the best person to give advice to. But what I've always said is, if you're in doubt when you've finished high school, take a year off or 2 years off or 5 years off and go out into the workplace and get some practical experience. Work as a PA, work as an intern, get a difficult job in the service industry so you see what it's like. And then you go, do I want to go back to college and get a degree, or do I want to go the hands-on route? And as you say, Cliff, there are many pros to both. I think it's largely a question of temperament and also, sadly, these days, financial resources, because going to film school ain't cheap.
Exactly. And if you want to do half of what you would learn at film school on your own, just start watching as many old movies as you can and study the techniques from where they sprouted from, because that's a lot of what they're going to teach you from in the film schools anyways, is the origins of the techniques and whatnot. So just listen to a bunch of DVD commentaries and watch as many classics as you can and be a PA, and there you go.
Yeah,
that's a cheap way to do it.
That's good advice too. And especially if you were to subscribe to one of the really great streaming services like Criterion, which features is built around the concept of showing films that have undeniable quality, and many of them are not that well known in the mainstream, and many of them have commentaries, many of them have extra features. Other filmmakers will talk about why they love this film, or they'll analyze a particular shot. And there's some great YouTube channels about filmmaking as well. We live in an age where you can teach yourself pretty much anything except brain surgery, I would think. I think it would just be difficult to get test subjects. Although, I don't know, maybe not. Depends where you live, probably.
It's weird to me that doctors call it a practice. Like, I would prefer that you be proficient in it. Anyway.
So outside of doing film, well, obviously you've got a lot of other interests, but what would be like the secondary? Would it be still the Meteor thing, or music, or?
Gosh, it's interesting that you've asked that, Marty, because I find myself at a crossroads at this period in my life. So I have had the good fortune to work in many artistic fields as a cartoonist, illustrator, photographer, art director, publisher, and television host, television producer, and now indie film producer, thanks to you guys. So I've had very fulfilling experiences in many different fields, and I loved comics since I was a kid. I really wanted to be a cartoonist, and I worked in the comics industry for quite a few years. I had the really good fortune to befriend and work with and study with some of the greatest cartoonists of the last century, including Will Eisner and Harvey Kurtzman and Art Spiegelman, and my oldest childhood friend is Neil Gaiman. So we grew up as kids reading comics and drawing comics together. So comics were always in my life, and I always thought I was going to be a cartoonist. And after going to art school in New York, I actually have a degree in cartooning, and working in the comics industry, working at Raw Books and Graphics, Art Spiegelman and Francois Mouly Spiegelman's company for several years, I felt like, well, I've filled the jar of experience in comics for me now. Doesn't mean I don't love comics anymore. I just wanted to do something else, and I've had that experience in publishing and in the music business. I was a professional musician for 25 or 30 years, and I'm not sure. What is there that I haven't done that I'm really interested in doing?
Is there anything that's like a hobby, perhaps, that
You're
doesn't
looking
have
for
to
your
be a
next
professional thing? Maybe it doesn't have to be a professional thing. Is there like a hobby that you like to do in your downtime that's kind of a creative outlet? Or
I found that in the past 2 years or 2.5 years, really since the beginning of the age of COVID, I suppose, I've finally found a way to read the amount of literature that I've always wanted to. I've always loved books. I'm a writer, as you know. I love reading books. I collect books. I've worked in the publishing industry for many years, and I have a terrible habit of buying loads of books and going, oh yeah, well I'll read this later. I'll get to this one's got such a good cover. Look at this. Oh, here's another film history book, and then not reading them. And so I've become very Stalinist in my. If you're going to buy a book, you're going to have to. That is going to be the next book that you're going to read. So I make time for reading virtually every day. It might only be 15 or 20 minutes, but more often it's an hour or more. So I've been steaming through a lot of books I've always wanted to read. That's something that I enjoy. And in the film world, I've again had the good fortune to have experienced a lot of different parts of the film and TV world, all of which I've enjoyed. And I think everyone wants to be a director, right? At some point. And I mean, anyone who's in film and television, everybody wants to be a director. So ever since I was a kid, I thought, being a director must be the greatest thing. And I'm a great fan of the auteur, of the writer-director, but not necessarily the obvious ones that we would go to, like Orson Welles, who's great, of course. But I'm a great fan of John Boorman, Terry Gilliam, Cameron Crowe, these writer-directors from our era who are real creators that have a story, well, like yourselves. You come up with a story, you turn it into a screenplay, you direct it. You're the film equivalent of Will Eisner or Harvey Kurtzman or Art Spiegelman in the comics world, where they're writer illustrators. They do the whole thing, and so much of film and so much of illustration and design and comics is production line. One person does this, one person does that. So I like that the concept of the creator who gets to be involved in all aspects of the production. So I'd love to do more directing. I don't really have the director's brain. I know you need to be very clear about decision making and have a picture of what you want and how you want to get there. And I've watched you guys many times on calm days and on pressure days, and how well you work together. And you have a very unusual working relationship. Marty does the storyboards and keeps track of all the shots and the technical stuff, and Cliff you're a little bit more hands-on with the action and try this and talking to the actors, but you really work seamlessly together, and it's a very unusual thing to see two writer-directors working in harmony like that. So I like directing small things, and the piece that I think was most successful for me, that I enjoyed the most, was a 10-part YouTube series that I did for my Meteorite Men co-host Steve Arnold, called Fireball Steve, and we did that a couple of years ago. And he wanted to do a series that really explains how if you saw a meteor or a fireball in the sky, what do you do? How do you track that? How do you find it on the ground? How do you identify it? So he came out to Tucson, and we designed and built a set. We wanted it to look like a mad scientist set a bit like Blitzkrieg's lab in the fake trailer at the beginning of Revenge of Zone, actually. So I really loved doing that. It was a very interesting experience for me because Steve and I had worked so very closely together for over 3 seasons of Meteorite Men, which took 4 years. It was 4 years of work to make the 3 seasons. So that I like that. I like being able to have a picture in your mind of how a thing is going to be and then bring it into existence. And it's not that different from writing a book or executing a painting. In my creative world, I usually have it's almost like a vision in my mind of what the thing will be at the end. And then how do I get there?
Yeah.
And I directed well, actually, my limited experience as a director also began with Meteorite Men. It was the Wisconsin Fireball episode, and this enormous fireball had been seen in late 2009 over Wisconsin. And we went there and we filmed and we didn't find anything, and then we went back, and I think we ended up going about 5 times over a period of several months. And at one point, some watcher, I guess fan would be the wrong word, but some watcher had posted on our Facebook or whatever, some chat room, "Oh, it's so obvious that you guys didn't film that all in one go, because at the beginning the tree leaves are green and then at the end they're brown." And I would always try and answer these things, and I go, "Yeah, you're absolutely right. We went back 5 times over the period of a year looking for these meteorites and trying to complete this episode. It was a really tough one." And I think on the 4th trip, there was no director. I can't remember if he got sick or forgot, or they just didn't book a director, and Steve and I are out there in the middle of nowhere with a cameraman and a sound man, and that was it. And so I said, well, I guess we're directing ourselves in this segment. And it always interests me when you see actors who become directors, Clint Eastwood being a great example, and I think a really great director, one of my favorite living directors. And Ron Howard, also, what a fantastic career, starting as a child actor. For some people, I think you spend enough time in the film and television environment and you absorb enough to go, okay, I think I understand how to direct now. I really doubt that Ron Howard went to film school after all of his experience in television. He probably absorbed it on the set.
Film school, yeah.
So I could see more of that. I could see more directing, perhaps. And another a neglected love of mine is paleontology. I love fossils and fossil collecting, and the fossils are a heck of a lot easier to find than meteorites. So I don't know. Maybe we'll come back to that later. I got a funny fossil hunting story.
You mentioned our decision-making process, and I remember the day that you came onto the set to do your scene, you showed up with a couple of outfit choices. I thought maybe this or this with that and so on, and you're showing it to me and Marty, and I said, let's do it this shirt, let's do that shirt, but let's do it with this jacket. And I walked away, and you seemed, I don't know, I didn't know you very well at that time, but you didn't seem happy, or I don't know, you weren't going about the business of putting on the costume. You were just sort of sitting there looking at it. I said, is everything wrong? And he went, no, it's just that I don't normally work with people who know exactly what they want. And I thought, well, okay. I mean, I don't have time to not know what I want. We got to shoot this thing.
Oh, that's so great. Gosh, I don't remember that. But I definitely remember the day. And that was the T-shirt that said Ashcan Comic.
Ashcan Comics, yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Which is one of the many in-jokes that we put in the film, because an Ashcan comic is a fake comic book that's put together for promotional purposes.
Yep.
Or a prop or similar.
So good.
So we normally have a question for actors about what their dream role is, but I'm going to mix it up a little bit for you. What's your favorite thing to do on a film set?
Ooh, good question. Because you've done
yeah.
I mean,
she was like, I love everything.
costume, set design, art direction, photography, production, I mean, you've done so much stuff.
What an interesting question. Actually, I'd love to answer the acting question as well if we have time, but let's do this first. The thing that came into my mind is a story that Cliff and I have laughed about to ourselves many times. But I just think it's one of the most brilliant things that's happened in my filmmaking and television making experience. And it's to do with costumes. And this goes back to the time when Revenge of Zoe was screening at the Silver City Film Festival. Is that right? That's what it's called. Silver City Film Festival
it was
in
at
Las
the
Vegas.
Orleans Casino.
Right.
Yeah. Mhm.
So Cliff calls or mentioned on one of our regular production calls that he and his lovely wife are going to Vegas to see Revenge of Zoe because it's in the film festival. And it's playing at the Orleans. And I go, the Orleans, man, I would love to see our movie on that big, big screen. So I decided to fly up and meet them. We had a blast. We had some extra time. And the day before the screening, we went for this lovely lunch. And that's where we were going through the Love Song script that day.
We sat down and went over it page by page. I had lunch and went over it page by page. Yeah.
And who knew that there was a beautiful cafe in a beautiful botanical garden in Las Vegas? It's not what I would have expected.
Really, I was shocked. It was gorgeous.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So I'd done a bit of research and I found this strange-looking little antique mall place. And I said to Cliff, "Do you like these kind of weird shops? And we've got a little bit of time before the screening. Let's go." And so we jumped in a cab and we drive to this pretty rundown section of old Vegas, and here's this collection of funny little shops in a strip mall, and it was one of those antique marketplaces where there are a bunch of different vendors inside one area, and it was quite small. And Cliff and I were thrilled because we found some old punk rock stuff and it's just your typical knickknacks, Vegas shot glasses and this and that. There wasn't much of interest. And then I wandered into this room in the back, and it's a very tiny room, and it is just jam-packed full of costumes, of every kind of costume you can think of. Dance stuff, historic stuff. And there's this busted up mannequin, this female mannequin that's missing an arm and part of its head in the corner, looking really sad. And there's this very strange outfit on it that looks like maybe something from a Roman gladiator movie, but clearly a woman's costume. And I was transfixed by this thing. It was really well made. Had all the
leather,
rhinestones on it. Yeah, a leather, very detailed, a headdress and gauntlets. It was just beautiful. So I go, well, okay, it's this very strange, slightly kinky looking costume. I don't know. I'm just very enthralled by it. So I then walk around and then I go back and look at the costume and back and forth. And Cliff knows me pretty well. And after a while, he comes over and he's just standing there with his arms folded, looking at me. And he goes, I see you really interested in this costume, Geoff. I'll tell you what. If you buy that costume, I'm going to put it in the movie. And I said, exactly right. You're on. You are the perfect enabler. You've given me a really good reason to buy this costume. I don't know why I want this costume, but I do. So I bought it and I took it back to my hotel room in Vegas and I laid it out on the bed and I took a photograph of it and I sent it to Jessica Stone, who became our associate producer, because she's a costuming expert. Mm-hmm. She makes her own costumes. She collects vintage costumes. She restores, expert cosplayer, restores vintage clothing. And I said, look at this thing. And she flipped over it. So because of that, we ended up, I gave her the costume. She repaired it. When I purchased it in the store, the owner of the place was so thrilled and said, "Oh, this belongs to this collection from someone who bought the entire inventory of this old costume shop that used to make the wardrobe for all the Vegas floor shows." Yep. So it's actually a legitimate historic Vegas costume.
Yep.
And Jessica said, I think she estimated it was from the 70s, but we didn't really know. So she repaired it. She wears it in the film. She got cast in the film so that she could wear this costume. You guys wrote this part for her to wear this costume. And then I began to realize the full extent of her many artistic talents. And she came on board as an associate producer, as my assistant art director. We ended up shooting a large chunk of the film in her house. And it's because of her that we shot at Marnie's house, who had the pottery wheel that we so desperately needed. So as a result, I became very interested in costumes. And that was something I never really gave that much attention to before, but I was so enamored by this story and what what a small thing, this sly remark from Cliff, who can see me obsessing over this very strange antique costume.
Well, I wanted you to buy it, and I kept
Yeah.
thinking, I was like, he should just buy it. He's obviously into it. He's got the money. It's not going to kill anything. Just buy the damn costume. And then I thought, I'll just give him a reason to buy it. That's what I'll do.
And you know, Jessica wouldn't give it back to me after that.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, she's still got it. And she goes, I have to have that. I'm in love with this costume. I have to have it. And she goes, I couldn't bear the thought of you giving it to somebody else. And I go, oh, I'm not going to give it to somebody else. I just thought I might put it on a mannequin and keep it as a memento of the film. But anyway, she still has it. I don't think I'm ever going to see it again. Anyway, it's in great hands. Good work, Jessica.
Fantastic. She brought, again, you work with people, you meet people, and you work with people that bring so much to the table. You and Jessica and so on. It adds. That's how you level up a film. That's how you level up your production. You bring in people, you let them do what they're talented at and what they're good at and what they're passionate about. You know.
Well, you guys do. Not everybody does that, but that's one of the reasons it's so great working with you. Is you're able to identify what people are good at, and you encourage them to pursue those areas without nitpicking, without micromanaging, and with a great deal of enthusiasm and encouragement. And it's very rare in film and television to be given the freedom to go do what you do best, without somebody all the time going, well, you know, it's a little bit too green, or it's too loud, it's too quiet, it needs to be bigger or smaller. And anyway, I feel like I didn't really answer your question. That was just a funny story. That was something that enthralled and delighted me, and I love the causality of that. The enormous cause and the enormous amount of positive benefit that came from us going to that antique store in Vegas that day. Which I would not. Also, none of that would have happened if you guys hadn't submitted to the Silver City Film Festival. So well done.
Well, and then you got to see. That was a great trip. You got to see me damn near lose my shit at a film festival. We got to see you buy a costume. It was quite a trip. It was fantastic.
It was a really fun time, and it made me appreciate the enormous value of sitting down with you and going over a script, going over a screenplay when it's in production. And I'm not sure I'd ever done that. Well, I'd done that on my own, but I'm not sure I'd ever sat down with the writer of a script before and gone through it page by page and said, what about this? And I mean, I wasn't being bossy. You asked me for my feedback, and
absolutely.
It was very exciting and rewarding to be able to go through that. But I should mention that one of the things that I've enjoyed the most, and was certainly one of the most time consuming, was designing the props for the comic book shop for CBDs in the Love Song film.
There was a bunch of them.
I mean, what a tale that was. Yeah. So, of course, in Revenge of Zoe, we filmed extensively in Charlie's comic book shop, and I had a great relationship with Charlie, and he was really wonderful to us, very welcoming. And it was good and bad to film in a real comic book shop. It was good because it was a real comic book shop, and we didn't have to put much fake stuff in there. We put in some Zoe posters and a few of our own things. But then we, of course, had these experiences where actual customers come in while we're filming, and Charlie said, yes, you can shoot here, but I can't curtail business. And in one instance that you guys will remember, one customer stayed for so long that we asked them if they'd be an extra in the film, and we just shot this gentleman looking at comic books.
Yep.
And then because COVID delayed the completion of Love Song, Charlie decided to retire from the business, and he sold his shop, and he didn't have a comic book store anymore, and we didn't have a location anymore. So after much soul searching, we decided collectively that we would build a comic book set. And I have to again thank Peach Properties, the property management company in Tucson, that so very generously allowed us to use their gorgeous property, One Tool Avenue in downtown Tucson, a beautiful historic brick building right by the train tracks, circa 1900, for several days. And we built an entire comic book set there. And we got a twofer in that, didn't we? Because we shot in the basement as well for the scenes with Adam and John. But something that's worth pointing out to the casual listener is we can't stock our comic book shop set with Spider-Man and Superman comics. We don't have permission to use those very heavily copyrighted images that are owned by big, powerful companies. And so the gigantic assortment of comic books and posters and artwork that you see in CBDs, or you will see in CBDs, in the Love Song of William H. Shaw, were either done by friends of ours, friends and colleagues, and we sought permission to put those pieces in, or they were created by me.
Mhm.
And I don't remember how many comic book covers I did, but I must have been at least 30 or 40,
Yeah.
I would say.
It was a-
Comic book posters,
it was a bunch.
comic book covers, rather, movie posters, book covers. That gigantic robot cutout was created from scratch.
Underground
So-
robots. Yeah.
Yeah. So we really wanted to make this comic book store feel real. And when you go into a comic book store, what do you see? Loads of fan stuff. Stickers and posters and toy robots and gas masks and all kinds of crazy stuff. And so I got really carried away with it. And it wasn't enough for me to just do a couple of comic book covers and repeat them. They had to be different. And so some of them were based on my artwork. Some of them were artwork that I licensed. Some of them were copyright free things. But yeah, loads and loads and loads of comic book covers. And I had a lot of, I generated a lot of amusement for myself doing that, especially that Metal Robots of the Underground series, where I think there's 9 or 11 covers from this imaginary series. I don't know what the heck Metal Robots of the Underground are, but I had a lot of fun with the covers, and there were all kinds of silly little jokes about robots and puns and things in the covers. So I loved that. And I would say my favorite single piece is probably that Frenzy Apocalypse poster.
That's a good one.
Is
It was a
on
nice
the back
one.
of the store, which is
Frenzy
also
4, right?
the
Three, my bad.
not the giant Frenzy poster that we had in the unveil scene.
Right. No. The one.
Illustrated by Carl.
Yeah, the one where she's got the gun and the explosion behind her.
Yeah,
Yeah,
photograph of Rachel with the
that's a good
mushroom cloud going off behind her. That was
Three
a fun one to do.
films, and that's the first time we ever had to build a comic book store or fake one.
Yeah.
3 movies about a comic book store, and that's
Well,
the
it's
first
funny
time we
because
ever had to do that.
in the if you count the fourth one, we were going to build a comic book
True.
store in that one, and
Yep.
we were going to do it on the same side of town. So
Yeah.
when we get all the way to the end of the saga, we ended up having to finally do it. But we got to, it's a good thing we didn't try to do that, way back when, because it would have
That
been
would've never
terrible.
pulled it off.
Now,
Yeah.
I mean, Geoff would just hang out in the place. We'd all leave, and he's like, "I'm just going to stay here for a couple more hours, just listen to my music, and just enjoy his creation."
Space. Yeah.
It's true, isn't it?
I don't
And I
blame
would
him.
go
It's great.
early as well. And go, I want to make sure everything's just right and move some of these comic books around. And it was I've always loved the feeling of being in a set, especially when there's nobody else there. Before the day's filming starts and we're tweaking the lights, and there's this strange atmosphere. It's like being in a club at sound check. It's you've got this
I know what you
place
mean.
that's been created for the purpose of a show or filming, and it's going to be populated with actors or musicians, but they're not there yet. And
Yeah.
it's like a secret time where everything's
Calm,
set
quiet
up. Yeah, and the
store,
lights
yeah.
are on, and all the
Yes.
things are there, all the goodies are there, but there's no activity yet. And there's a tranquility, a magical aura to a place like that.
Yes.
And I think I first experienced that when I was a kid, and I went to Disneyland when I was 10 with my parents, and we stayed until midnight when it closed. We wanted to see the fireworks, and there's virtually nobody left. And we were in the Wild West in the frontier town, I think, and there was nobody around. And I went over and I started looking at the prop storefronts that they had. There's the Miner 49er shack and the pickaxes and the pans for gold and the canteens and all these things. And I went up and looked at them really up close because there are no guards. There's no one around, and it was all fake, but it was so well done. And I was entranced by the illusion of it. They're just facades. There's nothing behind the building, or maybe there's a foot of wood around each corner to make it look like. But it goes back. But then I stuck my head around the back and I go, well, there's nothing there. This is just a fabrication to create the illusion of a Western town, and it works really well. And so I've always been fascinated by that experience, and also literature and films that 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 poke at that idea of the nature of reality or facades. Philip K. Dick does that a lot, of course. You see that in Patrick McGowan's The Prisoner. This idea of something itself being a set. You're in a set. You're existing in a set that's not actually quite the real world.
You're going to like the new script, Jeff. You're going to like the new script.
Yeah, you're going to like it.
It's funny because you tap into one of the things that's one of my favorite aspects is just the whole illusion aspect of it. Of, you know, the movies itself, it's one giant illusion. We're making you think that this is all happening in a row. And I'm always fascinated by that sleight of hand aspect. And, you know, we know the tricks, but other people don't know the tricks, and they think it is all magic and illusions and stuff like that. And, you know, I hung out on that set when there was nobody in there as well, the comic book store, and I know what you mean. It had this serene, calm vibe to it, which is very unusual for a film set because there's usually all something going on. But I understand why you'd like to hang out in that place when nobody else was around, because it was very calming.
Mm-hmm.
I like
Excellent. Well, I'm so glad you had that experience too. And it's a difficult thing to explain.
Yeah.
It's as if it's a world that you've created. It's a private world. And when the crew and the actors and the action has not, they haven't arrived yet, the action has not yet begun, it has such a different mood than when the cameras are rolling and we're all working and thriving in that environment.
You mentioned Philip K. Dick. We buried some references to him in that film too.
Oh yes, we did.
Yes.
Yeah, we got to try to enter into that Philip K. Dick Film Festival.
Yes, please.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was another example of you guys encouraging my madness, where because Philip Dick's my favorite writer, science fiction or otherwise, and I've studied his work in great detail for many years, and I was associate producer on the Radio Free album, a feature film that came out a few years ago. So that was a rather spectacular experience of working on something that you care deeply about. But we came up with this idea that we would collectively put these Philip Dick references in the film, and there are just loads of them, and one of my favorites is the poster that's in Billy's apartment, Billy and Katie's apartment.
That poster is so good.
The world that Jane made, and that's I don't know how much we should explain that, but
I ran across the book that was inspired by at work, and it just put a smile on my face because I immediately see the poster.
Oh, marvelous!
Title. I'm like, I know what this.
Oh, great. Well, so we should probably explain that. So a very early Philip K. Dick novel was called The World That Jones Made, and Phil had a twin sister named Jane who died at birth, and he always felt some sort of spiritual or otherworldly connection to her throughout his life, and so the world that Jane made is really Philip Dick. So it's a reference on multiple layers, and the credits on that poster, they're all characters from Philip Dick novels, from a lot of the famous novels like Ubik and Through Stigmata of Palmer Eldritch. But there are a lot of other ones. That's one of the most noticeable.
Remember, we had that idea for a small art book of all the images and stuff, and that way, because then people could actually read all those credits on those posters and shit. I mean, we have so many creative ideas that we'd love to do, but I always did like that concept of the art of Zoe or whatever it was going to be.
Well, I've thought about that a lot, and you'll remember that we were thinking of calling it The Art of Frenzy, and collecting not just my work, but beautiful work that was done by other artists like Carl Ottersberg, the illustrator who did our beautiful theatrical poster for Zoe, and the artists who did the earlier comic book covers and so on.
Oh, the line drawings for the opening of Revenge.
Yes.
Oh,
Molly Kiley's beautiful
line drawings.
That's another hard to believe, amazing story about how things sometimes just fall into place for filmmaking. When we were wondering what to do for the opening credits of Revenge of Zoe, and we were in agreement that we wanted some sort of comic based theme, but we didn't really know what. I was sitting in the car park, Ina Road outside Sprouts one night at night, just sitting in my truck. I don't know why I was doing it there,
You know,
but
like you do.
I was looking at through my Instagram. I was looking through Instagram accounts for cartoonists. I just did a search for something like fantastic, unusual cartoon line art drawings. And I'm just sitting there in the dark going through these images. And I see this one. I go, oh, I love this. This would be perfect. What is this? And I click on it and it takes me to the page of an artist named Molly Kiely. And I go, I know this now. I recognize that name. She used to work for Fantagraphics in the 90s. She was quite a well-known cartoonist. I never met her, but what beautiful work. I wonder where she lives. Tucson, Arizona.
I thought she was an old
I sent her a message and I go, we never met, but I know your work from the old days. I also used to work for Fantagraphics a bit. And I'm looking for a cartoonist to do some work on a film. Are you interested? And she goes, yeah, let's meet for lunch. And we met at that funny little airport, that really cute little, the Marana Regional Airport, where there's a little cafe, a little restaurant. And I thought, this is what life is all about. I found a famous underground cartoonist on Instagram who happens to live in the same town as me. And we're going to meet at a tiny restaurant at a virtually unknown airfield out in the desert. It almost sounds like the alternate universe version of Casablanca in reverse.
She's got the key to the virus that we need to change to save the world.
And she's such a lovely person. And so not only did she do the beautiful line art that we used in the animated intro titles to Revenge of Zoe, but she also does a cameo in Love Song. She's the customer wearing the cat head in CBDs, and there's a lot of her artwork on the wall. Her original artwork on the wall in the comic book shop.
She's like our Blofeld in a way, because you would only see the hand, and the end credits just say question mark. We're not telling you who's playing this person, but the funny thing is, it's like her name is right above her in the store. So if you're looking, who's under that cat head? Well, look at the name right behind the cat head, and there's your answer.
Molly Kiely.
Oh, when I saw the credits in production, I didn't realize that was intentional. I thought you didn't know who was.
I mean, we can go either way. That was just my initial joke with it.
Oh, nice.
The mystery of who is this person under the cat head? We don't know.
I've given it away now.
Good job.
Well, there's always editing, Cliff.
Yes, true.
So I have a question. So this is one of the questions I like to ask everyone. Do you have you've obviously been in front of the camera before. It's not you're not foreign to that. So do you have some favorite feedback that you've ever gotten from a director, and how do you like to receive feedback from a director, if you like to receive feedback at all?
Gosh, it's an unusual. That's a very thoughtful question, Cliff. I'm gonna go back to David Rout, who I mentioned earlier. So he was one of my STEM journals directors, and a very talented guy, also editor and producer. And when we started working on the show, he sent me a questionnaire, which I found quite odd. He's got a very good sense of humor. He's a very funny guy, very intelligent guy, really good company. We've stayed very good friends. And he sent me this odd questionnaire, and it was all things like, where did you grow up? What's your favorite food? What kind of car do you drive? And I thought, I feel like I'm at school. I never had a thing like this before for a TV show or a film. So I called him and I go, Dave, what's the purpose of this questionnaire? I don't mind doing it, but what's this about? And he said, well, I just want to learn more about you. And I think this will help. So I go, well, okay. So why not? So I filled out all the questions, and one of them was, do you have any phobias? And I'm being very naive and just trusting that this is sort of a kind of nondescript thing that we're just doing. So like an idiot, I fill out, my phobia is bees. I'm terrified of bees. I love bees. I find them the most fascinating creatures, but I just have several times seen swarms of those killer bees in southern Arizona on the move, and man, it's terrifying. So very foolishly, I put bees there for phobia, and didn't really think about it again. And then a few weeks later, I get a script from Dave from this new episode that we're doing of STEM Journals called Social Insects. And he called me with great amount of glee, and he goes, "I wrote this specially for you." And so we did termites out in the desert, and then we did a thing on ants, and then we went to the ASU bee lab in east of Phoenix. And there were 32 active hives
I already
there.
like the guy.
And it wasn't enough to just look at them in the lab. I had to go out and inspect the hives. And so I put on a bee suit and the helmet and all that. And so, okay, you might think, oh, well, big deal. You've got a phobia about bees. You got to go out and walk around through some hives, but you're wearing a bee suit. So how scary can that be? And so my answer to that is, why don't you put on a fireman's suit and jump into an active volcano and see how you feel? So it was an absolutely terrifying experience to have these bees, hundreds of bees swarming around me. Even though I'm in this suit, the whole time I'm thinking, I'm sure there's a way that they could get in, or maybe there's some kind of special bee and their stinger will go right through this. So afterwards I go, Dave, what was the point of all of that? And he said, your fear and your courage were so real that you couldn't have faked that. You can't. That's not something that you could manufacture. And so my takeaway from that, what I've learned, and what I tell people who tell me that they want to be in television and what should they know, I say the one most important takeaway is the more you suffer and the more hardship you go through and the more terrified you are while making the show, the better television you get on screen. So while it wasn't exactly direction, but that was a very useful takeaway. And another thing that comes to mind is Debbie Myers, who was the general manager of Science Channel and a great supporter of Meteorite Men and our boss when we were making the show. We absolutely loved working with her. She was really committed to education and quality television. And Steve and I had a call with her. We had many calls with her, but one day we were talking. We'd done season 1. We were getting ready to go into season 2, and she said the thing about the show that meant the most to her was the authenticity and the enthusiasm. And she said, it doesn't matter how good an actor you are, you can't fake that. You can't fake the enthusiasm. And with you guys, it's real. Your enthusiasm is real for what you do, and that's what we aspire to. And I wrote it down and I printed it out on beautiful paper twice, and I had it framed, and I sent one to Steve, and I kept one in my office, and I still have it. I still carry it around with me. So that stay in touch if you can with the genuine joy and enthusiasm whenever you can, because real enthusiasm, real excitement will always overshadow manufactured enthusiasm.
I think that's what people I think that's that thing that people catch on to when they're on our sets, that keep them, that they're like, I really want to be involved in this. It's like Marty and I are very genuine and enthusiastic about what we're doing, and we're doing it, because we love doing it, and we're trying to make something great, right?
For sure. That's very true. And it's an efficient set, but it's a very friendly set. And Marty's very calm. Cliff's very, we have to get this done. Okay, hurry up, move this along, but not in a mean way, just in an authoritative way, but funny also. And I mean, you guys will crack up laughing when something funny happens, and it's always well received when someone does a little prank or mixes up their lines and everybody cracks up. You guys never get annoyed at that. You enjoy that.
Paul pulled the greatest one on Bradford during Revenge of Zoe. So Bradford, there's a scene in Revenge of Zoe where he's in the hotel room. He's in his hotel room. He's drinking. He's really enjoying it, and he's in a bath towel around that's it, just a bath towel, and he's drinking. And somebody starts knocking at his hotel room door, and he thinks it's the maid, so he keeps saying, "Yeah, leave me alone, go away, I don't need no towels, whatever," and threatens whoever's knocking that he's gonna I'm going to answer that door, I swear to God. And so he walks over, he drops the towel, walks over, and it's just a shot of his back, his butt, basically. And he rips the door open, and our actor Paul is standing there. And so we tried the whole sock or whatever thing, and he's just like, screw it, let's just go. And so he's bare ass naked, and he opens the door, and Paul's got his phone out and makes a fake phone noise. And Bradford's like just dove to the floor, and I mean, I thought I was going to pass out laughing. And Paul's like, "Look, no photo." He's showing him like, "I didn't take. I wouldn't do that to you." But it was
so
it's on camera. That it's actually on camera of him doing it, and it's really hilarious.
That's a really great scene too, and Bradford plays that really well. His annoyance is palpable. Like, okay, I warned you, and you see what's coming. You know he's going to drop the towel to the maid. It's such a good, and then of course it's not the maid; it's his agent. It's such a good scene. I love that.
So
do you have? Oh, go ahead, sir. Sorry, no, please.
I was going to say, so your dream role is beekeeper, right? That's what.
Oh, very good. So maybe I could play. Maybe I could play John Belushi in a biopic with the buzzing bees from.
There you go.
From Saturday Night Live.
But so what was your dream role, to go back to that quickly before we jump into the next thing from Cliff there?
That's something that really interests me, and I've thought about this a lot. So the majority of my career has been in nonfiction television and in documentaries, and so I've done loads and loads of science and science and adventure television, and some acting, which I have enjoyed immensely, and thank you very much for the opportunity for real acting roles. The type of role that would appeal to me, a dream role, would be to play a character from history that I really admire, a hero of mine, but perhaps not an obvious, not an obvious character. And something that comes to mind is what's called the Bone Wars that went on in the late 1800s between two great American paleontologists, O.C. Marsh and Edward Drinker Coate. Do you know about this?
Yeah, isn't that the one where he walked in and was like, you got the head on the wrong end of the skeleton? Yes.
So these two, well done. So these two started off as colleagues and became fierce rivals in the last 30 years of the 19th century. And they were both eminent scientists and paleontologists, but they were quite different characters. And there is a fantastic nonfiction book about them and their lives and their work called The Gilded Dinosaur, which I absolutely love. And so I've always really been drawn to the story because, of course, it includes my interest in paleontology and the Wild West and and early science and adventure, big adventure like Indiana Jones level adventure, dinosaur hunting. This fierce competition between these two guys, this really a war between them. Who can find the biggest and best and newest and most important dinosaur? And I like both characters, but I'm always a little bit drawn towards O.C. Marsh. I find him a spectacular character. But if I were to play him in a movie, which maybe we'll do this when we get the multi-million-dollar infusion of cash that we're expecting any millennium now.
Coming soon.
Good. I would have to grow a really preposterous beard and mustache, but I would do that for the opportunity to do that. So the opportunity, the chance to inhabit a character from history that I really admired, who was somewhat in my field as well.
I would cast you just to see the mustache and the beard.
Yeah, you would, wouldn't you, you rascal?
Yes, absolutely. Kidding me? Don't tell me you're afraid of bees. You know who I am.
So no, we're going to see bees in the next film.
Just kidding.
No, I'm allergic, so no bees.
Oh, okay. No, I am too, actually, which just adds to the adds to
right. Yeah.
And another way of answering that would be the opportunity to be in a film adaptation of a work by an author that I particularly liked, like Philip Dick, for example. And as mentioned, I was lucky enough to work on Radio Free Albemuth, so I worked on a Philip K. Dick novel in a production capacity, but to act a role that had been written by an author you adored, I think would be a very fulfilling accomplishment in life.
I would give a couple fingers and toes to be able to get a budget for like a William Gibson script. I would.
Same here.
You need sure. I mean, it's worth the trade-off. If I can make Neuromancer the way I want to make Neuromancer, or God forbid, Count Zero. Yeah, I'll take that all day long.
Yeah, Neuromancer is one of my all-time favorite science fiction books.
It's fantastic.
It really is
so
fantastic,
good.
and it's a genre defining moment.
Yes,
Everything was
it's
different after
yes,
Neuromancer.
yes. And he coined so many phrases in that book. I mean, he created cyberpunk with that book.
Yep.
Just created. It's just like, here, I'm just going to create this entire genre. They're going to base games on it and all kinds of stuff. And
I put him at the same level as H.G. Wells and Mary Shelley. He's a major figure in science fiction and literature.
You have a Gibson story, I believe.
Yes, he's a very nice gentleman too. I once was lucky enough to hang out with him in New York. I'd gone to a reading by Jack Womack, the sci-fi writer who wrote Elvisy, which is a book that I really like, and it was in this funny little underground, literally underground. I don't mean secret. Well, it was secret, but I mean a below ground club in New York City. And I somehow heard about it. It didn't seem like it was widely advertised. I was invited by a friend of a friend and went. Really enjoyed the reading. Had a great time. And there's William Gibson in the audience. Small audience on a late Friday night in the East Village. So when the reading was over, I went up to him and said, "Oh, just introduce myself. Love your work, great fan of your work, Neuromancer." Probably said to him what I just said to you, which was a genre-defining moment. And I said, "Fancy a drink?" And he goes, "Yeah, sure." And so we went over and we just sat at that bar in this little underground club for a long time and had a really fascinating conversation. And he's just a really nice person, obviously brilliant, but warm. And what a moment. And it was one of those times in my life where I was sitting there on the stool drinking cocktails with William Gibson going, there are so many people that wish they could be sitting at this stool right now, enjoying this moment. Yeah. So I became an extra fan after that. It's such a delight when you meet someone whose work you admire in the real world and they turn out to just be a splendid person.
Yes.
Oh, that's how I felt about Trejo. And when we met Trejo, it was just like, this guy is awesome.
Yeah,
what a great dude.
The years and say, hey, can we use one of your songs in our film, which is something I've been doing over and over again for the past few years. So yes,
that's great. Thanks. It's great because it's like, look at all this quality freaking music we're getting our hands on, man. It's fantastic.
Well, and thank you guys for letting me do it. And I know this is something that we had kind of thrown around as an idea. And I remember saying to you guys, this was a little while after Baby Driver come out, and I said, not counting Baby Driver, which just came out, what is the last film you saw that had such a kick-ass rock and roll soundtrack it made you want to go out and buy the album? Think about it. And I think we agreed on Grosse Pointe Blank was probably it, may have been it. Yeah. I think that was one of the ones that was thrown around. So that was the bar. I want to make a soundtrack of great music. There's very high energy, all original music, not canned music, that is so good that people would want the album or the playlist. And so you guys said, well, if you can make it happen, go do it. So one of the first things I did was have a custom T-shirt printed that said "Kick-Ass Rock and Roll Soundtrack," and I just wore that around the house while I was thinking about how to do it. So just an example of how important music is to me. So there are a lot of music films that are very meaningful to me. The winner, hands down, is Westway to the World, the story of the Clash, the official Clash documentary. Clash are my favorite band of all time. How convenient for me that my favorite ever music documentary is about my favorite ever band. That just worked out really well. And directed by Don Letts, who was their sound man and traveled with the band for many years, and later was in Big Audio Dynamite with Mick Jones, Clash guitarist. So very interesting filmmaker. To me, it's the definitive rock documentary. It's the definitive punk rock documentary. Don Letts does such a fantastic job of mixing an emotional snapshot of that time. Really takes me back to what London was like in the late 70s, how grim it was under the conservative government and all these houses and buildings boarded up, and the birth of punk rock, the political strife, the racial tension, the police riots,
strikes too, right?
Oh yeah, garbage strikes, coal miner strikes, power cuts. It was pretty grim in England then. But it's not a bleak film. It recaptures that atmosphere that led to the birth of punk rock. And then he does these brilliant sit down interviews with all the members of the Clash. The definitive interviews. This is the official story of this tremendously important band. And Joe Strummer is a hero of mine, one of my favorite musicians and lyricists, and also one of my most admired public speakers. And when I started doing a lot of public speaking, I studied Joe. I watched Joe's interviews because he's such a passionate speaker and so articulate. And the film was made fairly shortly before he passed away, and it's a great testament to the band. So, and I was at 2 of the concerts, of which they have footage in the film. So, that's a deeply meaningful film to me. That's one of those films that whenever I see a copy, I just buy it because I know somebody's going to want it, and I've distributed to the world many copies of that DVD.
And well, that's also a big statement. The definitive punk rock documentary. That's a big statement because I mean I haven't seen Westway to the World. I think I may have seen it years ago, but I haven't seen it in a while. But to me, that's why am I suddenly blocking on it? It's the West Coast punk rock documentary.
Oh, Decline of Western Civilization.
Decline of Western Civilization. Yeah. Why? How did I just blank on that? But yeah, Decline to me is the definitive punk rock. But if it's at that level, I gotta go see this thing again.
It's a wonderful film, and I like it because it's not just live footage. There's plenty of live footage, but the footage of them on stage and the footage of what England was like and the youth movement was like at that time, combined with these very professionally done, very candid interviews, it's miraculous to me. It really presents the picture of the band. And I also have to give a very favorable mention to the Runaways biopic from 2010, which I saw the Runaways when I was a teenager, and I saw Joan Jett many times, and I'm a massive fan. I think Joan Jett's a brilliant musician. I loved the Runaways. And so that film is so accurate, it's so authentic. The costumes and the guitars, the album covers, everything that they recreated, and Joan Jett, of course, executive producer on that film, which is no doubt one of the reasons it's so authentic. But I love that. But for actual musical, well, I'm not sure if you would even quite call this a musical, but Baz Luhrmann's Elvis, which just came out this year.
I haven't seen it, but I keep hearing great reviews.
Man, I had this experience about 12 minutes into the film where I actually thought to myself, it's almost not worth making films anymore because this is so transcendent, this scene. It starts about 10 minutes into the film, and Elvis as a young boy. I'm not giving anything away. When you see the film, you'll go, this is the scene Geoff was talking about. Elvis is a little boy, and he hears this music coming out of a shack, and he runs over with a couple of his friends. He's probably, I don't know, 6 or 7 or 8, and Big Boy Crudup, the blues player, is playing, and there's a woman dancing, and then they hear this more intense music, and you see a tent across this sunburned grassy plain, and he runs over there, and there's a gospel performance going on, this spiritual, almost magical gospel performance, and Crudup's playing "That's All Right, Mama," but a very slow bluesy version of it, and then it blends with the gospel music, and then the film starts cutting to him going to Sun Studios and recording the Sun sessions there, and then it starts cutting to his first. He's getting psyched. He's outside. He's getting psyched for his first performance at the hayride, and it keeps cutting back to Elvis as this little boy, and his hands are going up, and he's being taken over. He's going into this trance in the gospel music service, and it's as if this powerful spirit, this energy of black music is going into Elvis and up into the sky or into heaven. It's an astonishing moment in film where if I imagine that Baz Luhrmann said to himself, I want to show what would happen if you were possessed by music. If this benevolent spirit of music went into you and caused the birth of rock and roll, what would that look like? And it's such a masterful mixture of filming and visual editing and audio editing. It's just, to me, it was a transcendent moment in film. It's wow. So do go and see that when you
That's on HBO right now.
when you have the chance. Yeah, it's a heck of a movie.
And I'm sure you've experienced that at concerts in real life, where you've been to special shows where the performers are just like, wow, you're just channeling, right there, right in front of your face. It's nothing quite like a really amazing concert.
I left a piece of my soul at the Dirt Alice in Chains concert at the Tucson Civic Center. There's still a part of me in the basement of that thing, just throwing up the horns and screaming rooster to this day.
It's funny, as an aside, and I don't know if you want to snip this or not. You were mentioning that in that Clash documentary, you were at 2 of the shows.
Yes.
Well, they made a Kurt Cobain documentary, Montage of Heck. I'm not really that fond of it. I think it's a little tabloidish, but strangely enough, the Phoenix show that Cliff and I attended is featured in the footage. And I'm just like, oh, geez, how weird that of all the things, the show that we were at is in that footage. It's just odd when you're watching the documentary and you're like, wait a minute, I was not a part of this history, but I witnessed a piece of it as it was happening. It's just crazy.
That's great, and you become part of the history. And one of those two Clash concerts is the famous outdoor concert they did at Victoria Park in the late 1970s, and it was the first big rally of the anti-Nazi League. It was the Rock Against Racism movement, and I think there were an estimated 80,000 people there.
Wow! And
we didn't know. There was no info, of course, many years before the internet, and it was just a poster that said Clash, Steel Pulse, Sham 69. We didn't know anything or when anybody was playing, and it took hours to walk through this giant park, and there were tens of thousands of people and skinheads and punk rockers and everyone, and it was just complete mayhem. And we didn't know. There was no kind of schedule. We just got to the edge of the stage. And by the way, the person I was with was Graham Smith, the bass player in Phasers on Stun, who co-wrote Beating of the Rain, which is the song that's the introduction, the intro theme to our new film.
Really like that one.
We just got to the side of the stage, and a guy walks up on stage and he goes, "London City Rockers, please welcome The Clash!" And the whole place went bonkers. And footage from that concert is in so many films. It's in Westway to the World, it's in Rude Boy, it's in London Town. A couple of others. I think it's in the Futures Unwritten, the Joe Strummer documentary. But I just keep seeing that footage comes up over and over again. And every time I go, I was at that concert, I was right down at the front in front of Paul Simon, and I always look for myself in the crowd.
That's weird, Jeff, because that Nirvana Phoenix footage pops up in other documentaries too, and I keep having the same experience. Like, there it is in the Foo Fighters movie, there it is in, I'm like it's just almost kind of creepy in a way. It's like, really, guys? It's like I like it, but it's so strange that it's just like you keep using that.
It is, especially when you're not expecting it. And I watched this feature film London Town quite recently, in which a fictionalized Clash, and particularly Joe Strummer, are characters in the film. And so it's a fiction, it's a fictitious feature in which real characters make an appearance. But then boom, suddenly there's that Victoria Park footage again, right in the middle of a feature film rather than a documentary.
Wow.
Yeah, it's weird and also pleasant. It takes you right back there.
Well, we're definitely going to have you on again, because there's so many stories to tell, and we didn't even get to the fossil story you were talking about. But we do have one question left.
Okay, well, I'll gladly come back and we'll do the other ones.
Oh yeah.
There's definitely going to be a Geoff Notkin part 2.
Okay,
there has to be. By the way, guys, if you haven't figured it out by now, this is one of the most interesting people you're going to hear on this podcast or talk to in the world. The guy's been everywhere and done so much. He's a fascinating guy. And a good friend of ours.
What's your favorite, or one of your favorite moments on set with us?
Yeah.
There's so many good ones to choose from. Okay, so
well, then pick a handful.
Okay,
go ahead.
Okay, so I'm gonna do two short ones and a slightly longer one.
Nice.
So the dream sequence. We're filming the dream sequence for Revenge of Zoe.
Oh yeah.
And I found that location using satellite images. I'm sitting in my office in Tucson, and I'm going, we got to find a location. It's got to look really bizarre out in the desert, where there's going to be this really spooky dream sequence, and there's that beautiful song by Christopher Norman that plays over it, which is very ethereal piece and really stands out in the soundtrack, and I think goes so well with that. So I'd seen this satellite image of this strange mountain range outside of Tucson that looked like the backbone of a dinosaur, and I got to go see what that is. So I just drove up there in my truck and wandered around and found this very spooky and steep looking mountain range, and you'd never tell this from the way you guys filmed it so skillfully, but it's like 50 feet from a paved road. We didn't have any permits, we didn't have any kind of permission. We just took the whole crew up there and we go, okay, just shoot quick here, and studied with cactus trees and everything. And it's that moment when Billy is drinking water out of the rock. And I think you just come up with that. I can't remember if that was in the script. I think you came up with it on the spot and said, "Oh, we should have a bit where Billy drinks water out of a rock." And then Cliff goes, "Okay, find a perfect rock. We need to be able to hide a bottle behind this rock." So we've got the whole crew running around on the side of this slope, steep slope, with cactus with big spines in the summer, and there's probably scorpions and rattlesnakes, and everyone's running around looking for rocks. And then suddenly Cliff yells, he goes, "Wait! Just stop a second. Everybody's looking for rocks and we've got a goddamn geologist on the crew. Geoff, go find a suitable rock." Which I did, and that is the rock that was used. So that was a moment of great hilarity. And then also in Zoe, the scene that, well, I love telling this, I love saying this, I was the stunt driver in Revenge of Zoe in a very tiny scene. We realized, so the red car, the old red Toyota, the venerable 1988 Toyota Corolla that is in Revenge of Zoe, that's Billy's car, was my car. And it
served as a transportation car, a set car.
Yeah.
It was great.
So we realized we didn't have the shot where Billy leaves California to drive to Tucson after he's eaten a bag of mushrooms and is drinking vodka. And Billy had, the actor, Bradford Trojan, our great friend Bradford Trojan, had shaved off his beard and also wasn't available. So I went to a Halloween store and I bought this really stupid looking kind of fake Hasidic beard for $1.99. It's so tacky, it's so badly made, with just a string at the back. And then we went up to the Walmart parking lot. The film crew, the camera, I think just camera.
Yeah, it was just the three of us, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, kind of at sunset. And I put that stupid beard on and just pretended to be the great Billy Shaw. And I wanted him to look like he was highly intoxicated and he's setting out on this. So I just drove the car up onto the curb and smashed it around and did all this crazy stuff in the Walmart parking lot. And I knocked off part of the exhaust pipe and the muffler.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure you can hear that.
Yeah. Oh, does that come through in the soundtrack?
Yeah,
I heard it.
Yeah.
So but of course you can't tell because it was getting dark and you just vaguely see a guy in there with a beard. But whenever I see that scene, I go, that's me sitting in there with this most preposterous beard. Actually, even more preposterous than the beard that I would have to grow if I was going to play O.C. Marsh in the Dinosaur Wars movie. So what am I even worried about? So those are the two funny ones, but the winner, the overall winner, has to be the Skylab story. So I've heard many times in interviews somebody will go, "Oh, I get inspiration from my dreams. You know, my work comes from my dreams." And I go, "God, that just sounds so lame. That's not even really work if it just comes to you in your dream." Well, I had a dream and I went and painted it, and I go, "That's just really lame." Until it happened to me. And then I didn't think it was lame at all. So I wake up one morning and I've had this very vivid dream where I'm in the set of William Shaw and I'm playing my character, Adam. And Ed Gibson, the famous astronaut who was a member of the Skylab crew who spent 84 days in space, comes into the store with a copy of this comic book, Skylab #1, which there is no Skylab comic book, but
no,
that in my dream I saw the cover very vividly, and it was a very Jack Kirby like cover with the spectacular metal and the reflecting on it and the bubbling radioactivity that Kirby would always put in his spacescapes. So I woke up and I go, "Oh wow, that would be absolutely brilliant, because the real Ed Gibson is a friend of mine, and I know him from my work in spaceflight, and he lives in Phoenix. So I don't think I even waited for the next production call. I think I emailed you guys and go, I had this crazy idea. I got to talk to you about it. So we had a call, and I go, listen, I had this dream where Ed Gibson comes into the comic book store with this copy of the Skylab comic book, and we buy it from him. And can we do that? And you guys just look at me like, God, every time this guy calls us with an idea, it's more bizarre than the previous one. And you guys said, if you can make it happen, we'll write some dialogue for it. So I called Ed and said, Ed, I've had this crazy idea. I want you to do a bit part in our movie as yourself. And you come into the comic book store with a copy of a fictitious comic book about your own mission. And then, of course, I called, and he said yes. And I called the mighty Carl Ottersberg, our theatrical poster artist, and told him this idea. And I did a sketch of how I'd seen the comic book in my head. And of course, he did a blazing rendition. Fantastic, beautiful, gorgeous.
That's very cool.
Skylab cover. And so it came to be in real life. And the real Ed Gibson, who held the world spaceflight duration record for something like over 20 years, I think, walks into our set that we built with a box full of fake comic books that we made, and does a scene.
A fake comic book.
So that goes back to what we were talking about much earlier on, about having this vision, this image in your head of a thing that could be. I mean, I saw the whole thing in my head actually in a dream, and then we made it happen. So that was a marvelous experience for me. And again, I want to thank you two for being so supportive of these are not everyday ideas.
The weird thing is he's not the only astronaut in the film.
I know. Well, and this is another one of the brilliant things about William Shaw. So, of course, as you know, in that montage in the Isle of Games scene, we invited a lot of our friends who are extras our friends, interesting friends, people that we like, characters, to be extras in that scene. And it so happens that a lot of the people in that scene are astronomy and spaceflight people. So I asked my friend, Dr. Cyan Proctor, to be one of the extras. So she is a science teacher, PhD, television host, brilliant character, and a great spaceflight advocate. So she came for filming in a full-on spacesuit.
I was going to say, what kind of spacesuit?
So
it looks like a Series 7, like one of the early flight suits.
Yeah.
No,
it's real. Yeah, it's real. So she's very noticeable in the film. So when you watch the film, when it's released, and there's the scene, and you'll see this lady with the space helmet and the bright spacesuit. The amazing thing is, shortly after we shot that, she got picked to go on the Inspiration 4 mission to space. She'd not been to space. She was a space advocate, but she became an astronaut afterwards. And we already thought we were so clever because we'd managed to get Ed Gibson to do a cameo. And
she's
then
on part-time.
Cyan Proctor became an astronaut retrospectively in our film. So as far as I know, it's the only feature film with 2 astronauts in it.
All right. So see, kids, dreams do come true.
Yeah, well said, Marty.
Right
Keep
out of
dreaming,
your head,
guys.
right into the screen. Wow, that is crazy. It's funny, as one last little thing before we wrap up. I had an idea that came out of a dream for the movie as well, which is unusual for me. And it was one of those more like right before you wake up, so you're kind of like half conscious. And then I immediately woke up and did a prototype of it where I was like, we can make our own fake covers with pre-existing pictures of like Rachel. And so what I did this mock-up of her with the rose and like a fake Frenzy title over it. And then that spread to, we can make these covers. And then that one kind of morphed into the Comic Book Diaries book cover.
Oh, marvelous. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I
so
didn't know
like,
that was a dream moment for you.
Yeah,
as
it's
well.
weird dream moments have found their way into the film. Very bizarre.
Did that new that Frenzy Fever Dream cover, did that come from that also?
Yeah, that's all kind of that same that idea. But I got up and usually sometimes you wake up and you think, well, I'll write this idea down later, and that's always dumb because you forget it. But in this instance, I got up and I immediately went to the computer and mocked it up and sent it to you guys. And then it kind of, the ball rolled, and then it found its way into the finished product, which is just, it's so crazy when that happens, when it's just this weird little spark, and then you get to see it come to its conclusion in that same fake comic book store that Ed Gibson walks into.
How about that?
Yeah, just wild.
It's some strange metaphysical commentary on creativity that we're not going to fully understand, but these things have happened multiple times to us, and actually the idea of using the song "Beating of the Rain," which is the intro title song, that also came to me in a dream. And I remember sitting up in bed, and I just had this dream that we were all in the movies, we were all in a cinema, and we were watching the opening of Love Song of William Shaw, and it was this song by my old band, Beating of the Rain, that was originally written by my punk band Phasers on Stun in London in the 1970s, but then my later band, The Big Picture, did a version of it. We actually recorded that at Lenny Kravitz's studio.
Oh, really?
In the late 80s. And this is an interesting story. I'll come back. We were going in to record one night, and Lenny was walking out, and he was carrying a little girl in his arms, and it was Zoe Kravitz, who's now the famous actor, female actor, star of the remake of High Fidelity, which I thought brilliant. So I met her when she was very tiny. But it was such a vivid dream and I remember the sound was really good in the cinema. I was going, gosh, this song really does sound great as the opening title. What a good decision that was. And then I woke up and I sat up in bed and I go, Beating of the Rain is the opening title for the film. I never would have thought of that. And then we mocked it up and you guys liked it. So that was another one. Bizarre, isn't it?
Moment of clarity in your sleep. And I guess it makes sense because your brain is working all these things out and we're thinking about the movie constantly, and then you wake up, boom, there's that idea. So it's just wild.
And I really believe in going with those things when you can. Not every idea you have in your dreams is going to be a good one, but the ones that are uncannily relevant. It wasn't a case of. I'm sure you've had this experience where you have dreams and you're listening to a song that doesn't exist, or you're watching a film that doesn't exist. It's something that your subconscious has created. Then you can't do a whole lot with that. But in these instances, they were very tangible things that you and I used. Yeah. We saw an image, had an idea, saw a comic book cover, or had this idea of an existing song, and then it becomes reality. It's a very puzzling yet satisfying experience to be part of that.
Yeah.
I like to think when those things happen, it's the universe saying, yes, you're on the right track. Just keep going the way you're going. This is the clearest signal we're able to send you with the technology that we have, but keep doing what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Follow those signs, people.
Yep.
Fellow filmmakers out there. Well, do you got anything you want to plug? That's what we usually throw that to people here at the last thing. Any projects you'd want people
anything
to
going on? Anything you
or...
want to plug or tell people about?
Oh, thank you. Well, I just will encourage listeners to look forward to the Love Song of William H. Shaw. This has been one of the biggest, most time-consuming and challenging and brilliant creative projects I've ever worked on. So much for our 14-day shoot that turned into a 2.5-year shoot because of COVID. But this would be my primary creative outlet at the moment, I would say. But thanks for asking. Of course, if any of your listeners want to connect with me, I'm very easy to find on social media. I'm Geoff Notkin, GeoffNotkin on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And my company is Aerolite Meteorites. That's my other job. That's my day job.
Oh, don't they make whiskey on the side?
Oh yes, Aerolite Meteorites whiskey.
They make a fine whiskey. They do. You'll see it in The Revenge of Zoe.
That was a case of us filming. We're actually filming, and we've got a bottle of whiskey on the table for Billy. We're filming at the Aerolite office. And one of you guys said, we need to cover up that label, quick! And I just reached onto a shelf and pulled an Aerolite sticker out and put it over the whiskey label bottle, and boom! I didn't actually intend that to really be exactly a plug for Aerolite, but that's the way it turned out. So yeah,
well, that's the same. I was going to say that's the same scene where you created all the box labels too.
Oh yes,
all the alcoholic box labels that show up in both movies too.
Well, that was a favorite thing too as well. We needed boxes of we needed beer boxes, not 6-packs, but the big boxes that multiple 6-packs come in for the opening scene of Revenge of Zoe, for the card game scene. And our wonderful friends at Plaza Liquors in Tucson, who have helped us with Zoe and Love Song, kindly provided the boxes and allowed us to shoot in their back lot and coming out of the store. So the idea there was to create fake beer brands, and they're all inspired by cartoonists. So there's a Jack Kirby Real Ale. There's a Peony, Pini.
Wendy Peony.
Yeah, Richard and Wendy Peony, creators of ElfQuest, who are longtime friends of mine. And there's a Neil Adams lager. I think
Neil Adams.
They're all comic.
I remember you asking us for like, do you guys have like a favorite thing?
That's right.
I think I said Neil Adams. Neil Adams. Or
and there's a Kurtzman one as well. There's a Harvey Kurtzman. I think it was Harvey Kurtzman Schnapps, if I remember correctly. We really had fun with that. And then we reused them. They made a return appearance in the scene in Love Song,
like seeing an old friend again when you drag those on the stair. Yeah, that's fantastic. Like, I remember those. I've seen those before.
Oh, I'm glad we kept them.
Yeah.
That's a good tip. Well, Geoff, good tip for you filmmakers. If you make a prop that works really well, you might want to throw it in a shed in case you can use it in another film later.
You never know when
just
they're
turn it upside down.
We're making a sequel.
I still have that black and white Frenzy poster.
Do you really?
And it survived 2 movies in a outline trim.
Wow!
Because we cut.
Well, you can see Revenge of Zoe right up there next to Night of the Comet.
Yeah, that's the real poster there.
I did notice that actually while we were talking, and listeners won't know we've got a video connection for the three of us just to keep in touch while we're chatting. But yeah, I saw that very nice pairing of Revenge of Zoe and Night of the Comet up there. Well done, Cliff.
Yeah, I like to humor myself and think they're kind of on the same level.
We're gonna have to make that double feature happen one day.
I'm no Tom Eberhart, but who knows? One of these days.
Yeah, I can see that. We'll make it happen.
Well, Geoff, we appreciate you coming on, making this sort of like audio history of the films and stuff. It's been really fun talking to everybody. We don't get to talk to everybody enough. Rachel and Biscuit and Julie's going to be on soon.
Yeah.
She's pregnant. It's just insane how people's lives are moving along. So we really appreciate you coming on. And first off, we appreciate you just joining us and making films with us. Like it's been a whole nother level of it. Eric was a whole nother level, and you were that next other level. So
thank you.
It's just been fantastic.
Well, I have so enjoyed the opportunity to be on the podcast, and I, as I've said many times to you and other people in interviews and just friends, it's been one of the most satisfying creative experiences of my life working with you two. You're so creative and supportive and energetic and fun. You make filmmaking fun. You've given me the opportunity to do things that I dreamed of doing and was never able to do. I mean, who gets to make a movie soundtrack with all their favorite bands? Talk about dreams coming true. It's almost unbelievable. And to sit with you in the Orleans and watch the movie with all that wonderful music that was made by friends of ours. So it's been a great journey, and we ain't done yet.
Nope. We've got plenty to go with us. Yep.
Good stuff. And I do want to get back to that rock and roll movie one of these days.
Oh, definitely. And like I said, the script is online. If you need access to it, if you want to start writing notes or whatever on it, just let me know.
The whole script?
Yeah. It's ready to go.
Yeah. Send them that link.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, I can send you a link and you can just start noting on it right now.
Oh, yeah. I've only seen, I think, maybe the first 30 or 40 pages.
Oh, well, shoot. I'll send that to you as soon as we get out of here, buddy.
Fantastic. That shall bring me a great deal of musical pleasure. I am quite certain to read this literary work by you two fine gentlemen.
Filmmaking happening on the podcast.
Yes,
You hear that?
how about that? We're
This is how you get it done, folks.
Geez, I didn't know the script was finished. Yes, this
You
is
do
how we
business
make
while
indie
you're
film.
doing business. Yeah, you do business while you're doing business. That's how it gets done around here.
Multitasking. All right, gentlemen, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time, interest, and support. And I look forward to our next adventure.
Right on.
All the best to you, Geoff Notkin.
Be seeing you.
Godspeed, sir.
Support the show on Buzzsprout for only $3 a month. Give us a 5-star review on Spotify or the platform of your choice. And be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube page.